Hello everyone, this is TIMOTHEVS.
Have you ever heard of the green man? A green man is a drawing or carving of a human face with either leaves instead of hair, or leaves spewing out of the facial cavities. If you live in a city in Europe or the New World with buildings dating to the 19th century or earlier, chances are you've already seen one. And if you haven't, you're very likely to spot one once you start paying attention to the doors and facades of old buildings. The meaning of these green men has been much debated and reinterpreted, but it's often implied that he was a pagan deity that continued to be worshipped in secret and survived Christianization. Let me get back to that in a minute. In case you want to see one for yourself, you are most likely to find one on a 19th or early 20th century building, as they were pretty popular back then, and there are still plenty of buildings around from that era. But if you're lucky, you might be able to find one on a mantelpiece in a 17th or 18th century house. You can also encounter them on doors. Around where I live, they're quite common on the doors of churches and the like. In this particular case, the green man serves as a plinth for the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus. These two characters from Christian mythology, standing as conquerors on top of a non-Christian creature, may indicate that the sculptor wanted this green man to represent a pagan deity. But was there in fact a deity that was depicted in this manner in pre-Christian Europe? Modern writers and sellers of home and garden decoration often describe the green man as a representation of the wine god Bacchus. The reason for this assumption seems to be the fact that the Greeks and Romans typically depicted Bacchus with a wreath of ivy on top of his head. But I personally find this far from convincing. A wreath on top of a human head is not at all the same thing as a half-man, half-foliage creature, and moreover, Bacchus was typically depicted as a beautiful man, while the green man usually has more grotesque features. A Greco-Roman deity that often does have grotesque features and is also sometimes equated with the green man is the woodland deity Faunus. However, Faunus is not depicted with foliage around his face, and unlike the green man, he has goat horns. According to another and somewhat more plausible theory, the origin of the medieval green man lies in the Greco-Roman depictions of water deities like Oceanus or Acheloos. However, unlike the green man, Oceanus was typically depicted with crab pincers for horns, and Acheloos had bull horns. By the way, one of them was broken off by Hercules and turned into the cornucopiae, the horn of plenty. But does this mean that the green man was a medieval invention that is unrelated to antiquity? Not quite, it seems. There are many Roman mosaics and carvings that fit the description of the green man, but it's not always clear whom they represent. Let's have a look at a few examples. A very clear example of a green man-like creature can be seen on the great dish of the Mildenhall treasure. As Bacchus and Faunus also make their appearance on the same dish, it's very clear that the face in the middle is not meant to represent the wine god nor his horned friend. There are, however, several clues that imply he is a water deity, like the seashells all around him that separate the middle part of the dish from the Bacchic scenes around it. the dolphins emerging from his beard, one of the sea nymphs called the Nereides riding a half-horse, half-fish creature called a hippocampus, and another Nereis riding a sea god, probably Porcus. So, in this case, the green man obviously represents a water deity, most likely Oceanus. I've encountered several similar Roman depictions of a green man-like creature, where the marine wildlife also points towards Oceanus. Other times though, such elements are absent, and yet other times, elements that are not particularly sea-related are present instead. Is this also Oceanus, or is it perhaps a lesser-known vegetation deity that was depicted in a similar fashion? In any case, whether they're surrounded by marine wildlife or not, it seems that Roman green men were primarily decorative in nature rather than devotional. At best, they may have had some kind of apotropaic function. In other words, perhaps they were believed to ward off evil, like the face of Medusa. So, is the green man of the Middle Ages and later a pagan deity that escaped Christianization? Well, yes and no. The visual similarity is striking enough to suspect that the first medieval green men were made by people who had seen foliate heads on old Roman buildings or graves, but it's conceivable that they were no longer aware of whom they were supposed to depict. In that case, we can't exactly say the deity survived Christianization. Roman green men didn't seem to have a devotional function to begin with, but if even the myths that were attached to them were forgotten, there's not much left there that can be called pagan. It's almost no more pagan than other architectural features that were popularized in antiquity, like say a Corinthian column or a tympanum. Though I have to admit, I kind of like the idea of Oceanus quietly hiding in churches, waiting to be rediscovered by future generations. This is a green man I carved out of a piece of beechwood back in 2010. It probably was one of my more challenging projects so far, but I think it turned out okay. What do you guys think? That was it for this time. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know by liking, commenting, or subscribing to my channel. For more pictures and links, you can follow me on Facebook. For references and things like that, check out my blog post. All the links are in the description below. Hope to see you again next time. This was TIMOTHEVS. Thanks for watching.